Hello, beautiful people. So first of all, thank you to everybody who's been following the 30 days of transparency. So today is a great topic that arose this morning. Actually, I was having a conversation with my friend Alex Fairman, some of you may know. And today I want to talk about sexual suppression and a little bit of transparency around my own journey with sex and making love. And this morning we was having a conversation, me and Alex, about love and about truth and the lies. And also he brought up a great point about how lots of people talk about love in the world at the moment and that their hearts are open. But actually there's a lot of real suppression and closed hearts and judgment and, you know, a lot of still conflict and a lot of fear around what it really means to open ourselves, to soften and to open our hearts fully. And how we have to go into the shadow, the shame, the guilt, the collective suffering around that. And how we're just not initiated in a way that we even know what it feels like to open ourselves and open our hearts fully. And of course, in the spiritual, let's say, self-help, new age sort of realm, which if you're watching this video, probably a lot of you have been in, you know, come across that. That's how you found either my video or you've been listening to what I share around self-love and opening our hearts and connecting to the magic and the awe and the wonder of life and sort of being in that frequency. That there can still be a lot of avoidance and distraction and denial and bypassing that goes on this I don't like to say path, but this pathless path. And also we can think we're doing yoga or we're doing certain practices or we're out there and we're really quite open in certain circles, but actually there's still a lot of closure and suppression and running away from really going into our genitals, right, and doing the work. So definitely the last couple of years and more so even in the last 6 months, I've really started to realize how ultimately so much of the problems that we face and the outer projection of reality that we're seeing in the world that is so dysfunctional is because of our sexual suppression and because this midsection, you know, is just so numb and desensitized. And I've been exploring this and discovering this in myself, in the men's groups that I hold, in the circles and hearing from men, and with the women that I hear from the women. So I'm really getting a direct experience and looking at it myself since I've been on this quest. And some would call it Tantra Quest or polyamory and all these names, and I don't like to just box it in with these names because the minute I say Tantra or yoga or polyamory or open relationship, everyone goes into the like compartmentalization of like, oh, that's what that means because I read that in a book or I read an article on it or I saw so-and-so talk about it. And I want to just try to transparently let's just move all that out of our beliefs and our ideas and our concepts and just look at our own sexual expression and look at how that may be influencing our choices and our behaviors and so on. And I just feel that if more and more people made love and more and more people could love themselves and learn how to caress themselves and get in touch with their own self, with their emotions and their feelings and their thoughts and which ones are true or not, we will start, and it's happening, of course, that's why I'm having this conversation, we will start seeing a very different world. And you could say there has been that parallel with lovemaking and tantra and all that for, again, thousands of years, and yeah, of course, this isn't like some new information. But what I found in myself through my own sexual repression is that even when I thought that I was like sexually active and sexually open, actually I wasn't. So for me, just to give you a little transparent story, that I grew up in a council estate. I grew up with some older boys, and I grew up in a world where women was about getting a woman, having sex, and the more sex you have, the more of a man you are, yeah? And that women are there for, you know, their beauty and for, you know, to trying to conquest them on some level. And at the young age, I was never really into masturbation and so on. I had a lot of wet dreams when I was younger, and then I think probably through not masturbating, or not knowing how to, or seeing it as sort of quite dirty and I didn't want to do it, started to become prematurely ejaculating. So yeah, at 16 I hadn't lost my virginity, and a group of guys wanted to take me to Amsterdam as a bit of an initiation. It's like a drug dealer's paradise for us. So criminals and drug dealers would go to Amsterdam, we'd get high on drugs, sleep with prostitutes and pay for sex. And, you know, the criminals, I call it the criminals paradise. But of course, at 16, I hadn't lost my, not of course, but for me, at 16, I hadn't lost my virginity, and I needed to have some sex, because I thought I don't want to lose, at the time I was like, I don't want to lose my virginity to a prostitute, because my vision of prostitute back then was like, okay, they're just whores, you know, they're just, you know, women that pay, you know, you just pay for sex and so on. And back then I never saw them as divine beings who are just surviving in a patriarchal, male-dominated society, as I do now, and using the best that they can to survive and you know, manipulate in a world of manipulation. But back then it was just like, okay, these are just, you know, prostitutes. So there was always a lot of fear around, you know, if the condom would split, and fear around sleeping with them and how many people had slept with them, and at the same time sort of, you know, being quite disregarding towards them, and understanding that, you know, as I grew older, knowing that that's almost like a bad thing to do as well, to pay for sex. But as, of course, the awareness changes, everybody pays for sex anyway. Even if you think you're not, because you're not going in to pay for a prostitute, most of the time, the way that we're dysfunctionally trying to connect with the opposite sex, we're paying for sex. So what happened is I had to find a woman. Luckily, there was a woman on the estate at the time that a friend of mine is also sort of exploring with. She came round, and anyway, it didn't happen in a nutshell. I'd prematurely ejaculated before I got to stick my, what I now call lingam, penis, inside the vagina and have the act. So, but, you know, I went through all the motions, and thought that, okay, I lost my virginity. And I can't remember when it was, but a couple of weeks later or whatever, I end up in Amsterdam, and then I'm inside with this older woman having sex, you know, intoxicated, high, and having like this amazing sex where she's like calling me all sorts of names and kind of surreal and mad. And I come out of there, and that's when I get the pat on the back and the initiation, you know, the man's initiation into sexhood was there in Amsterdam. So from that point on, I didn't, for whatever reason, I didn't think of studying sex. I didn't think of learning about my genitals. I didn't think of doing anything. I don't remember any sex education or anything relevant at school. And I just thought, well, okay, this is how you do it. And then let me just go out there and try to sleep with more women, because I love women and I love the build up and the ritual of, you know, trying to impress a woman. And so then I just started blindly playing this game with women and drinking alcohol and taking copious amounts of drugs and getting sex, right? And I, you know, in that realm, in that way of looking at it, I guess I didn't do too bad. Well, that's how I looked at it at the time. And I had this quest with another guy of like, we're going to sleep with, first person to sleep with 100 women, which again, you know, was a lot of fun. And and, you know, I managed to sleep with 100 women, which, you know, some men would love, right? They'd be, maybe you watching this, be like, wow, what would it be like to sleep with 100 women? You must learn so much. And, well, in hindsight, what does it mean? What did it mean? It means nothing. I paid for over 45 of those women, paid for sex, so that's not hard to do, that's not easy to do. And cheated on nearly every woman up until the last two that I've been journeying with. Cheated on them mentally, emotionally, intellectually, meaning like even just thinking, you know, flirting and always looking for the next quest, because my cock was leading the way. And been very dismissive to some women. I mean, in hindsight, looking, actually, I had a great time, some really beautiful experiences, and had lots of sex. Tried all the standardized positions, and and yeah, just had a lot of experiences. And I guess definitely thought along the way that I was a good lover, for sure, from that sort of egoistic standpoint. And so what I want to talk about in this the video today, and what was alive with me this morning, was just noticing how deep the repression and suppression is, and then sharing that what's been unfolding for me in the last few years. So about 5 years ago or more, I started reading a book called The Heart of Tantric Sex by Diana Richardson. And it opened me up to some new things like breath work, breathing, and it opened me up to caressing a woman's breasts before trying anything else, and emotionally connecting to a woman, and understanding a little bit more about just the sort of the potential that sex has, the potential of two beings coming together. But again, it starts intellectual. I read some stuff, and there's so much resistance about starting new things and being new ways, and the old ways want to stay in, and this need to go for ejaculation and the end result. It was always so strong. And so in the last, let's say the last year, many things have clipped and give me a completely different perspective on lovemaking. And I started to read more books, and I started to practice new ways, like soft entry, for example, prayer, circular breathing, breathing. Like, I realized that all the years that I've been making love, for years, not really fully breathing properly with the other woman. Just going through the motions of what I thought worked. And we are watching some, I was never really into porn, but watched a few porno videos for sure. And again, wasn't really into porno magazines. Thankfully, I never got massively addicted to porn, as I know so many men are out there now, and women. But I always really, I guess, wanted to pleasure the woman. It was always about pleasuring the woman, not really even thinking too much about what I wanted. Just like, how could I pleasure the woman? How can I get her to orgasm? How can I get her to make noise? How can I get her to gush? It was always like this. And although that was good, and I had some, sometimes normally as well on drugs, MDMA was a drug that I used to take a lot of. On MDMA, I'd have these like phenomenal experiences. But a lot of times it was about me giving. It was really about me giving to the woman and pleasuring the woman. And in that, I would get a lot of pleasure. So in the last year, I started to explore. And I say now at 40 years old, this is like, I'm learning how to love a woman, honor myself, and learn about what I want now at this age. And the vulnerability that brings up, and the emotion that brings up, and the invitation to de-armor and soften and die, basically, that old self die. And that brings up tears, and it's really beautiful, really, really beautiful. And now it's like what I talk a lot about in our retreats and the workshops to men and women and in men's groups, because I feel that often we're going so outward to try and fix what's the problem on the outside of ourselves, in our relationships, in our world, in our communities, and so on. And as we know, we hear messengers in the spiritual world, and many messengers talking about be a light unto yourself, know thyself, go within or go without, do the inner work, clean the shadow, clean the suffering, go inside. And when you really go on that journey, like that really is the phenomenal journey to go on. And it brings up everything, and you have to really look at everything, uncover the stones, and look at your shame, your guilt, and the unconsciousness, and not judge any of it, but just see where it comes from, and honor everyone in their own lost inquiry, especially around sex. I mean, I've heard stories, phenomenal stories of men and women that share their stories of their sexual quest, their journeys, and like, you know, they're so unique and so phenomenal and so naive and so lacking information and lacking awareness and safe exploration, that there's so much distortion and confusion and so on. So yeah, so this talk today, just that was alive in me this morning. I wanted it to be, you know, this was the one I wanted to record today, because now I'm learning about, you know, breathing and soft entry and lovemaking. Lovemaking's constant. It's not, doesn't start, doesn't end. And I've learned about resensitizing the bell end, you know, the head of the lingam, penis, and that the woman has a yoni and the bridge to her yoni, and then I call it the yoni verse, right? And I say to men now, men, don't unconsciously just try to get into a woman's knickers and try to get into her yoni and enter that bridge forcefully. We're not understanding that you're going into a whole yoni verse, a multiverse of emotions and intelligence and power and strength, and the man, the masculine, whatever you want to call it, the patriarchy, whatever, however you want to label it, has really suppressed that in the woman, because we've been the more, let's say, dominant species, and thought that, yeah, we must have to bash a woman and make her make noise and so on. And it's like, no, I'm realizing the most beautiful lovemaking that I'm having now, it's hardly any movement. There's a lot of breath. There's a lot of, there's synergy, there's connection, there's emerging, there's receptivity, there's sensitivity. I read this great book, which I tell all men to read, by Stephen Richardson. Diana Richardson's husband, is Making Sex a Meditation. It's tantric sex for men, making sex a meditation. And she writes one for the women called Female Orgasm, or Orgasm for Women. But I've got both of them, so I'm going to read Dara read the female one, and I'm going to read that too. But you know, you can read them both. Doesn't matter if you're a man or woman. And this is another book that I thoroughly recommend. So, How to Transform Your Sex Life into a Healing Love Story for Real. But this is a genuine story of Mika and Stefan, who went on a healing journey of themselves and share their story in this book. And I tell everyone to get this now, but it shares in there about yoni massage and breath and circular breathing and some other exercises that you can adopt and start practicing. But so I want to say that, like, I'm learning these new ways, and I'm seeing that, wow, this is where we are sexually repressed. That everybody, sex is a taboo. You know, we're sold, everything's sold to us through sex, through this sort of false sense of sex, this old sense of sex that I grew up in, of like lust and fantasy and, you know, and sort of almost illusion and like seeking for stuff and in the dark, lost and not really knowing how to communicate and function. And then this sort of sense of like real lovemaking, nurturing, cultivating life force. And I don't want to put it in a bracket of tantra or whatever, yoga or whatever, but ultimately it's all yoga, all tantra. I mean, you know, just communicating transparently is one of the main tantric practices of anyway. It's like, did you know that, or I'm learning that a woman opens her heart through emotional connection and giving her that presence, real presence. And a man, you know, he needs physical touch to open and soften, and then he can open his heart. So, like, understanding the difference of the woman and the man, and then also polarity. You've probably all, some of you have heard of polarity, but understanding that the feminine energy in any of us, mine or in Dara's or any other woman, invites, the feminine energy invites, and the masculine energy directs. So when you've got feminine and masculine and feminine energy, you've got that directing and you've got that invitation going, then you've got the polarity going, then you've got the yin and yang, then you've got the plus and minus. We're just energy, right? So what I've realized more than ever, and it's really happening now, it's like the theory has gone into the practice, and now I can sort of talk about it from experience, is that when the charge is right, when the plus and the minus really is right, and you're in that rhythm and you're charging and you're breathing together, you're really cultivating energy. You're cultivating what some would call orgasmic energy, or, you know, you are actually in the orgasm. And I'm also practicing with non-ejaculation and holding that and breathing with the perineum and and not going for ejaculation at all, ever. It's like a sort of agreement we have to not go for the ejaculation. And then learning that the woman takes hours to like really cultivate that energy and honor her and listen to her and get to know her and find her points, and then inviting the woman to lead us. And we as men are there as a servant, but not from the lesser person, from a like curious inquirer of like, how do you want to be touched? If I touch you here, here, and here, what does that do? And we explore together, and it's so beautiful. Imagine if young kids, teenagers were taught that they come together to explore each other, to learn, and that there was some like key literature given in school to educate people about the genitals. And I've read recently in Mantak Chia's book that there's like women have 2 other diaphragms in their yoni. 2 other diaphragms, the big one, and then they got diaphragms, and that how the the cervix opens, and it's like, and how you can explore, and and there's that beautiful, and this has been years I've been known about this woman, but the Om meditation, and the softer and slower you are, how magnificent it is. But men have to slow down. Like, you think you're slow, go another 100 times more slow. So it's beautiful, right? It's super beautiful. And then looking back and just seeing how distorted and unconscious I was while thinking that I was really aware and awake and some great lover, and realizing now that what it means for me to communicate what my needs are, or to not move or not act or not think I need to perform, and be soft, and soft entry as well. I mean, like, soft entries are where the lingam is actually soft, and all the stories that I've heard from men about their stories of their journey of their sex and the women, and how that's really enriched my life, to just see how taboo and how struggling we are around that, and how actually that's where the power is. That's where our power is. And that's what's suppressed. And my invitation is, if you listen to this video, is that really go on your own exploration and look at this. I'm on it. I'm going to share more videos on this topic. It's a key topic for me. Yeah. So I see us that for me is that you can be on a spiritual journey, you can do your yoga, you can do all these things, that's great. But when we go into the genitals, when we go into the wounding around our genitals, and the suppression and angst and denial around our genitals and around sex and around that energy, that's the life force. That's for me where we are missing the point. And if we can get there and educate our youth and let them bring wisdom to us through their knowledge, and educate them, and focus on that, and for ourselves, and bring that deep connection to ourselves, and how to love ourselves, and how to connect with ourselves fully, then we're going to see a rise of a different type of human being, a more integrated human being, a more embodied human being, a more compassionate human being, a more empathic human being, because they won't be subtly suppressing and hiding and bypassing their real driving life force energy that wants life and wants to be cultivated by other practices. So I leave it there. Thank you for listening and watching. That's just a little dive into transparency day, whatever it is, day 6, I think. Yeah, this topic is huge. There will be more on this, more experiences being shared. But when we transparently can own what we've been through and experienced, and not judge it as right, wrong, good or bad, then we can de-armor, soften, and become more open, more receptive, more supportive, more loving. Ciao.